Ciao, jewelry makers and artists. I'm Joey Balistreri, and I'm so excited to show you what I am working on today. This is a boho style of jewelry called a hand chain, and I designed this because I have these beautiful 2 millimeter micro faceted garnet round beads that I thought were stunning. But as you can see, they are really tiny. So I wanted to do a design that would showcase the beads and really just make them stand out even with their small stature. So this was perfect. I did this hand chain with 24 gauge gold wire and some 11O gold seed beads in between the microfaceted garnet beads. And so in this design, you have one small chain that loops around your finger that becomes your ring, and then this decorates the back of your hand, and then this bit of chain is the bracelet, and then the extender chain has a little bit larger hole, so it's fully adjustable if you want to make these for someone else. And I also took a minute, because it's just gold base metal, to coat my lobster clasp and my extender chain and the little dangle that's on the end of it with this eternal jewelry coating to keep it from tarnishing. So that's something I tend to take the time to do when I'm working with fashion jewelry. Fashion jewelry is only meant to last a season or two, but when I really love a design and I'm having fun with it, I want to make it last longer. So this is one of my tricks that I do for that. So after I finished designing with my beautiful microfaceted garnets, I had so much fun with this and realized it's an extremely comfortable piece of jewelry to wear. And also, you can still wear your pretty rings right on top of the hand chain. So I started designing, and I've done another little bit larger, chunkier style that I thought would be really pretty for the fall. But I want to lay this out so you can have a look at what it looks like when it's not on. So this is the loop that will go around your finger. And on this one, I use 2 check glass leaves and a crystal rondelle spacer, and it's a sort of an antique copper and a bright copper mixed metal, and just a little crystal rondelle just to add a bit of sparkle. And then the bracelet part, the hand chain part, is here. And then this is a beautiful embossed chain that I got from the Orlando Bead Show. And I just repeated my leaf design down here as the dangle for the bracelet. So the way that you put these on is, let me take my ring off. The way that you put these on is you loop the ring bit of chain over your finger. You could do your index finger. I like the middle finger. And then I put my extender chain part and my dangle over this side because I'm right hand dominant. And then when I turn this over, oh, I did it backwards, put my lobster claw on that side. And when I turn this over, my extender chain is laying comfortably across my wrist, and then I can take the lobster and clasp it wherever I need it to be. So they're very easy to put on and off, even though it looks like it might not be, but actually it is if you do it that way. So I'm going to take this one off and lay it out as a sample because I have designed 2 others to make with you on camera. And I also wanted to go over some of the possible supplies as I was going through my stash of things that could work for this design. I felt like I could make 20 of these. So anyway, let's start with one in silver. So I have here a piece of 22 gauge bead-along German style round wire. I keep my wire spools in a plastic bag. This is actually a scrap out of this bag. And I cut the top of the package and put it inside so that I know what's in there, and then I can work with a piece of wire and I'm not wasting any of my scraps. There are bits and pieces in here that could later become jump rings or spirals or head pins or eye pins. So that's how I store my wire, and I've always been happy with it that way. So when I started to do this, I just pulled out a scrap of wire. And then here are the other supplies that we will need for this. So in total, you need about about 12 inches of chain, so not very much chain. I am not a great measurer. I tend to measure with my heart, but for those of you that like measurements and are worried about wasting, I will give you the measurements on this. And as I said, this design is very adjustable, so you can play around with these measurements. So this bit of chain is about almost 4 inches, right at 4 inches long. So that's going to be the bit that goes around the finger. That's the ring part. And then in the center, any kind of a component. Now you can either make a component like I did on this one or like I did on my sample, or a chandelier earring, or any kind of a component that gives you an attachment at the top and at the bottom will work. Now we could just do that and that would be fine, but I wanted to put a bit of wire and do something else. So I have this check glass square flower. I have a couple of 2mm faceted rondelles. I have a couple of silver glass check spacers. I can tell you what these are. I believe these came from Bargain Bead Box. This is something else I do when I'm checking in an order. I keep these little bits of information. So this was 35 pieces, and oh, they're 5mm check glass flower spacers, and they're in a metallic silver. That is either Dollar Bead Box or Bargain Bead Box. I am not sure, but you could look for something similar. It's not a difficult supply to find. So we just need 2 of those for the design that I'm going to do. And then I picked these up at the Orlando Bead Show. It was $2 for like a 15-inch strand of these faceted crystals. So just to add a little bit of bling. So this is going to be my, I'm going to wire wrap my loop first, but I'll show you. This is going to be my design to connect underneath my focal point that lays on the hand. And then this part here is going to be the bracelet bit of the design. So let me give you the measurement on that. This one is about 6 inches, just shy of 6 inches. So a total of 10 inches of the hand chain, the part that's going to be seen on your hand. And then your extender chain can vary. I have this bit left over from the Bargain Bead Box, which was just short of 3 inches, but I have done these, a couple of my samples with only 2 inches. So this is stainless steel embossed paperclip chain, and I actually loved this chain. But it has large enough holes that it would to make an extender chain, easy for your lobster claw to grab onto it. So that's going to be our extender chain. And then my design for this one is to have a little bow hanging as the dangle. On this one, it's so small, it's just a gold teardrop on this one. And on this one, I repeated my pattern of my check glass leaf that I made my focal point out of. That became also a dangle. So you can really do anything you want, any design that makes you happy. But that's what I liked for this one. So we need to bring in a couple pairs of pliers, and this is really simple connection. So before I actually do start connecting, I want to wire wrap my component here that's going to lay on the back of the hand. So I don't recommend on this a simple loop. I really recommend a wire wrapped loop just for security reasons. A simple loop may work, but I needed to use a little bit finer gauge. I normally use 20 gauge. This is 22. Just because of the check glass and because of the tiny crystals, I needed a little bit smaller gauge wire. So the way that I do this is get a hold of this is a scrap piece of wire, and give it a 90-degree bend. And then you can warm the wire with your fingers a little bit to make it more workable. Then I'm going to put my round nose pliers, and I'm going to go closer to the tip because I want a little bit smaller loop than I would normally do. So you can see these taper down. So if you want a larger loop, then you go further down on the pliers. For a smaller loop, stay more towards the tip. And I'm sure if you've been making jewelry for any time at all, you know that you can take a permanent marker and put a little mark on your pliers, if you have several loops to make and you want to ensure that they are all the same, that is a great tip, so you always know where your wire was laying on the pliers. But I'm going to eyeball it because I'm okay if it's slightly different, and I've done a lot of these, so I think I'll be okay. So I just go over the top of that top barrel on my plier, and then I'm going to hold on to the wire and rotate those pliers around and then bring this to the front. So it looks like that. Now I also like to kind of straighten things up, and I'm a visual learner. So something that I learned many years ago when I learned to do this is to get a visual picture of that first loop that we just made being the lady's head. And then we're going to hold on to her head and wrap her scarf around her neck. So that little visual picture sort of keeps me on track. And for those of you dealing with dyslexia or any kind of a thing that is keeping you from remembering the steps to a good wire wrapped loop, maybe that will help you. So you can go around as many times as you want. I think 3 is quite pretty. And then I am just going to trim away that excess. I'll go back and fix it when I have the beads on. That way I have something to hold on to. So my design for this was one of these little 2mm crystals, one of these check glass spacer flowers, and this unique square check glass flower. It has a beautiful wash on top of the color. I just really love this bead. And then repeat the same on the other end. Silver check glass flower and the little crystal. So now on this end we want to be careful because that is a crystal, and we want to try to copy this loop exactly because this is going to be the piece that lays right on the back of your hand. So we want to do this as neatly as possible. So I want to do my loop going in exactly the same direction. So I'm going to grab it right here and give it that 90-degree bend, and then put my round nose plier right at the tip, pretty much in the same place as I did on the other end. Get a good hold of it and bring that wire over the top of those pliers. Now I want to rotate the pliers so they're out of my way and bring the lady's scarf around. So I have her little head right there. And I tend to like to have a look and make sure that everything is straight when I want a really neat. And for this piece, it looks much better if it's nice and neat. So I'm going to hold on to the lady's head and then bring her scarf around her neck. And I want to try to do the same number of wraps as I did on the other end because I want this to be a really pretty focal piece. And straighten up that loop. Go one more time. I want it to be a little bit tight because these hand chains will move around, but for the piece that's laying on the back of the hand, it looks good if it's tight. Let's come in, cut away that little tail, and now I have something to hold on to, so now I can tuck in any sharp ends, any little bits of wire. Let's check this side. Yes, this side needs it as well. Okay, now we can start connecting. Now I could have, on this piece, I could have attached my focal point right to this chandelier component, but I am going to use jump rings to do that. So I put some little 4mm jump rings out here. The other thing is, if your chain, I'm not certain about this one, if your chain is not a closed ring, and this one looks to be soldered all the way around, if your links of your chain are openable, then you can just open the links and attach them, but in this case ours are not. So we're going to grab this 4mm jump ring and open it and make our connection. So this is our ring part of the design. This is a really pretty stainless steel oval link chain, and each of the chains has this embossing, so it has a little bit of texture and even a bit of sparkle for being stainless steel. So I thought it was quite lovely for this design. So there is our ring part. Now we will get another jump ring and add our component focal. When you start making these and looking at your supplies for these, it is so much fun, and you can make them extremely dainty and delicate and almost not noticeable, but you can also make them with a little bit larger chain and a little bit larger beads. And I will talk to you about what works best just from my experience in doing these. But as I went through my supplies, and you'll see from my samples, my beads and my things that lay on the back of the hand, anything flat works really well because you want it to be comfortable and you want to be able to wear it as you type or write or make jewelry. So both of these pieces on this one are very flat, if you can see their profile, so they'll lay nicely on the back of the hand. We need another 4mm jump ring. These guys are so small, but it's also nice to have the smaller jump ring. You can use what you have, but it's nice to have the smaller jump ring for the bit that's laying on the back of the hand so that it doesn't detract from your beads and from your chandelier component. So on this one, I want the bracelet part to be fairly even. So let's try to get it on the jump ring right in the middle and see. Oh, I got it first try. So I got it fairly even, and now we're just going to attach it to our component and close that up really well. No space where the two ends of the jump ring meet. I tend to touch it with my finger and make sure it's smooth, especially on a piece like this, because you don't want anything that's scratching the back of your hand or irritating you as you wear it. Now we're going to add our extender chain on this side. Again, I'm going to continue with these 4mm jump rings. They are so tiny, but they're unobtrusive. I like that they don't take over my design. And it also, on this particular piece, it makes the transition from the smaller textured chain to this larger chain almost seamless. You don't really see. It looks really good. If my jump rings, especially these small ones, are not perfectly closed, I'll do that. Just put my plier in the opening of the jump ring and give it a little squeeze. Now on this side, we have our lobster claw clasp. This is so much fun. These are quick and easy. Once you've gone through your supplies and made your selections, they come together so quickly. You could make these for your book club or your neighbors or your children's teachers, or if you have gifts to do, this is something that is stunning and pretty fast to put together and not a lot of chain. So we're going to add our little bow charm on the end for a dangle. Now, you don't have to put a dangle, but for me, it looks unfinished without something at the end. For me, even if I just made a simple bead dangle, I would want something to finish off the end, but you don't have to. That is really up to your taste and what you think looks good. This one is, there it goes. He didn't close perfectly. Okay, and just like that, this one is done. So I'm going to put it right on top of mine just to show you what it looks like one more time. But you just put that over your finger and let our beautiful focal lay on the back of the hand. And then, as I said, for me, I'm right hand dominant, so I will let my extender chain and my dangle hang on this side and bring my lobster claw around, and then it's very easy. I'm not struggling to keep it in place, and then I can choose the link at which I attach. And if it feels a little tight, you can go back. And so these fit multiple size hands and fingers. Very, very adjustable and very easy fit. I would say one size fits all would be my description. So there is number 2. And I wanted to do another one with you because I found, as I said, when I was going through my supplies, I found some chain that I just thought would be wonderful for a hand chain. It is an enameled chain, and the enamel is two-sided. So if this flips around on this particular chain, it will look good on both sides. But I just think this is so lovely and fun, and this is actually a little bit more of a boho look. So I'll show you what I have worked out on this one. Let me move. I am doing the same thing with the wire. I chose the 22 gauge, and it's the round bead-along German style wire. And again, I went a little bit smaller because I'm using some glass beads and some smaller components for my center focal point, and I thought the smaller wire would work. I don't remember if I mentioned, but on these micro-faceted, I had to go all the way to a 24 gauge wire to make this little bar in the middle because these are so tiny, and that's what I needed to get through it. And I've been wearing it, and it seems quite stable and seems like it's okay. So on this one, I've already cut my chain, and I think the measurements are going to be about the same, but let's pull in the ruler and I'll show you. So this is the finger part, and you have to sort of work with the segments of this chain. So on this one, the finger part is 5 inches long. Now, the reason I did this one a bit longer than the other is because when I put this around my finger, it felt more comfortable with one flower underneath my finger here, and then the other flowers coming around, and that gave me an equal number. So that gave me 4 flowers here, 4 here, and 1 on this side of my hand. So on this particular chain, that's the way I laid out, configured my design. Now this is going to be the bracelet part, and it's shorter than the other part. It is about 4 3/4 inches long. And on this one, I needed it to be even. I needed to not have a flower. Let me get my fingers out of the way. I needed it to not have a flower here at the top because that's going to be my attachment point to this component. And then again, I have my extender chain, and I have dipped these in this eternal jewelry coating. I did that in advance. I did my lobster claw and my jump rings. So this will have a little bit of longevity fighting against the tarnish. So on this one, I think I will attach directly, I will attach my wrapped loop directly to the chain. So let's create our center component together. I'm going to do the same procedure where I grab the wire, giving myself enough space to make a loop and wraps, and then I'm going to put my round nose pliers in there. Since I want a smaller loop, I want the scale of my loops to be compatible with the scale of the chain. So I'm staying down on this tip of the plier. Then I'll wrap over the top, rotate my plier, bring the lady's scarf around, get it centered, and remove my pliers. Now from here, before I start wrapping, I want to connect the finger part of my chain. So I'm just giving myself a little space. So I just opened that like a jump ring, and I am going to connect. I think I'll leave it laying on the mat to do it. I'm going to connect both of my loops on the 2 ends, respective ends of this chain. And let me make sure it's laying the way that I want it before, yes. Now, I'm going to close up that little space that I gave myself. Get a hold of the lady's head and wrap her scarf around her neck. You can do 2 or 3 times. There's no rule. And it really depends on the look. If you want more of a gold presence, then do an extra wrap or 2. If you want it to almost disappear, then maybe only do 2. I like that. And we'll remove that little scrap. And I think it will need, sometimes it's easier to go back and tuck your wire in once your beads are on the wire. So I just want to make sure this is nice and straight. And then the design I worked out for this one is one of these little crystal, they are faceted, they look like tiny little turquoise pillows. I thought they were so pretty. And then I have this tiny little crystal rondelle spacer with a scalloped edge. It just adds so much detail because this chain is so dainty. Again, I tried to choose my other beads and components to be compatible scale. And then there again, this is a flat coin-shaped bead, so this will lay nice and flat on the back of the hand for this design. And then we just repeat the little rondelle spacer and the faceted turquoise pillow. And before we wrap, we can have a look. Oh, that looks so pretty. I love the colors, it's so happy. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side where we attach our bracelet part of our hand chain before we close our loop. So I want my loop to go in the same direction. So I have to sort of ignore the beads because they're going around right now until we tighten everything down. But what I'm looking at is to see that I'm bending my wire in the same direction at the top that I did when I did the bottom loop. So give it that 90-degree angle and then come in with our round nose pliers. And again, I'm staying as close as I can to the same spot on the pliers to give it a nice small scale loop. Rotate, bring her little scarf around, grab a hold of her head and wrap her scarf around her neck. The bent chain nose pliers work great for this. You can really hold on to the loop but keep the pliers out of the way of your wrapping. So you have control. If you're doing a messy wrap or a neat wrap, you have really good control of where the wraps are landing on the core wire. That looks good. I'm going to trim away. And now I can go back to both ends and gently, very gently, these beads are small, but gently neaten up my wraps, tuck in anything that's sharp. And again, on this design, that's particularly important because this is going to be laying on the back of your hand or someone's hand that you give it to. And so you don't want anything to be scratching or feel uncomfortable. Now, if your loops didn't get perfectly lined up, it's very easy to tidy that up. You can do a plier on each end, hold on to those loops, and then make that adjustment. But mine looks pretty good. Oh, and I just realized I meant to attach this here before I wrapped my loop, and I was on a roll talking and didn't do it. So it's a very easy fix. I'm going to take another one of these small 4mm jump rings and continue my design. I think it will still lay really well. So it's like plan B. And the cool thing about this chain is each of the links has a tiny little hole on either side of the flower, but it is connected by really small fine gauge oval jump ring sort of links, but they are soldered. I did check to see if I could open it, and it is a solid ring. So it's a really nice chain to work with for this. But I think this will lay okay. We'll give it a try. We'll connect it. As I said, what a fun project. It's really a little bit of beading design for your back of your hand part, and then the rest is simple connecting, and it's just really fun, and they come together fast. It's instant gratification. And then this is just a bit of curb chain, and if I can open this, then I don't need a jump ring, and I believe that I can on this one. Yes, it looks like this one is not soldered, so I can just twist it open, if you could see what I did there. And then I am going to just connect it to that last little loop beneath the flower and close it back so that the two ends of that link of chain meet perfectly. You have to squeeze it this way, whatever you have to do to make sure that it won't come disconnected from your flower chain. Push it a little bit. That looks good. And now the final step is to add our lobster claw. I had so much fun doing this design and could not wait to share it with all of you. I am not a big boho style wearer, but this could be changed in so many ways. I actually have seen these a little bit more formal. If you look back into the jewelry of the 1920s, they did a sort of diamond look bracelets that connected by a chain to diamond rings. So it's not a new style, and even if you're not a boho style person, I think you could have a lot of fun changing this. So let's try this one on over the finger. Oh, I like that. That is so pretty. That is so pretty. That's a really fun one. So as I said, I was having so much fun designing these that I started to go through my supplies and pulled things out of my own supplies for a lot more hand chains than I intended to make. But I already showed you the flat beads. So that was what I was looking for, is beads that were really stunning, had a lot of detail, but were flat. So I used that one. I really like that one. These are checked glass. They have such a beautiful, they have the Picasso champagne finish on them, but that's a nice flat bead that would make a great center component for one of these hand chains. So I may end up doing something with that. And then this was a chain that I recently ordered from BB Craft because I just loved it. I'll put the codes here. Sorry. Put the codes here so that you can have a look if any of you are interested. But it's very delicate, sort of like the one that I have on. And I thought it has a small cylinder section, like stations, in between the lengths of chain. Take it out of the bag. So I thought that would be a beautiful, even if you just wanted to do a really simple hand chain without beads. This is lovely and delicate. And again, where did my ring go? You could wear your rings. I have no idea where my ring went, but yeah, you can still wear your rings right on top of these. It looks really good. So that was something. I may do another one out of that. And then it's funny how when you start making these, you start looking at components that you never thought to use in this way. But I had these leaves from Bargain Bead Box, and again, they could very easily be your connection point if you wanted to do something that's a little bit more of a statement. That would work well. And I had I have this in every color, and I have made bracelets from them, but I thought how pretty this would be as your component on the back of your hand for a hand chain. And then you can do longer ones. I found these as well. And so I think I am going to do one more of these for myself. I travel a lot, and one of my favorite cities in the world is Venice, Italy. And so I found these fairy tale charms at Hobby Lobby. And I didn't know what I was going to do with them, but they remind me of the carnival in Venice. So I think I'm going to take my favorite one, which is this one, and I thought, let me cut it from here and share my idea with you. And so that's going to be the piece on the back of my hand. And I think I'm going to do a mixed metal with this. I had some oval copper chain. And I think maybe even I have the flat check glass flowers in this pink color with the wash on top. So I think I'm going to do one more hand chain for myself, even though I've made quite a few of them already. That was my design for this one, is a delicate copper chain to mix with the gold and the pink. So I'm going to do that one for myself, and I just want to show you, let me clean up my mat, and I just want to show you the very first one that I made, because you know our first one of anything is never the best. It's still pretty lovely. It's very simple. It just has the part that goes around your finger, a little swirly that goes on the back of your hand. Is that a word? And the chain, and then I just put a very lightweight seashell, sort of a seashell coin, as the dangle. And as you can see on this one, it's a really seamless connection where the bracelet part of the chain transitions into the extender part of the chain, and curb chain works really well for that. So I hope this has inspired you to go into your supplies and, oh, here's my ring, to go into your supplies and make something for yourself that's quick and easy and really fun and joyful. And I just think if you were going to a tea or a luncheon, or if you were meeting friends or colleagues after work for a drink, how lovely it would be to have this on, and what a conversation piece it could turn out to be. So anyway, thank you so much for spending time with me today. Have fun on your beading mats. Ciao, jewelry makers.